Hello there, everybody. I'm Martin Cross. This is Cross's Corner, and today I have the amazing Imogen Grant, world champion in
Walsh.
rowing. Walsh, I said Imogen Grant, Yeah, isn't that
It's
terrible? I'll
easily
start
done.
that again. Today I have the amazing Imogen Walsh. Not that Imogen Grant isn't amazing, but Imogen Walsh, double world champion, I think, in
Yeah,
rowing.
yeah,
And now prisons manager at Fulham Reach Boat Club, if that's
indeed. Yep,
correct.
yep.
Which is, and we're going to kind of get into all that and your career, Imogen. Just give us a flavour of what your day looks like today.
So today I was up at one prison up near Bicester, delivering a session up there. Flying back here for this interview, and then I'm out at another prison this afternoon. Again, working with a different group of residents, as they're often called, rather than prisoners as such. Delivering rowing sessions, which I think we'll get into in a bit as to why and what the purpose is of that.
Yeah. Now, how long have you been doing this particular job for?
So it started actually quite a long time ago. 2019 basically was when we first started the pilot project at Feltham Young Offenders, and then it ran for 6 months across 5 prisons, and then March 2020 hit, and everything shut down with COVID. So all visits into prisons were stopped, including from family members. But it took quite a long time for programs to restart in prison. So it's been going for quite a long time, but with an enormous break in the middle. So it's really only been going in full flow probably for about a year since COVID, and it's now kind of gathering speed and really kind of getting some good kind of impact now that it's been running for a little while.
That's really amazing. And have you been involved from the outset?
Yeah, so it was kind of I retired from rowing in 2016 and coached initially, but I really wanted to. We may get more into this later, I don't know, but I used to work for an international development charity before I rowed full time. When I finished rowing, because I was quite late, I'm quite old for when I started rowing sort of internationally. I coached kind of in a more conventional sense, a variety of clubs. I did a little bit of high performance, a little bit at Leander, at community clubs, at schools. But I really wanted to do something which used sport in a bit more of a well-being sense, a well-being kind of aim. 2019 was when I had a conversation with Steve O'Connor at Fulham Reach Boat Club, saying I'd really like to do this, and him saying, well, actually, I think it's about time that Fulham Reach kind of spread its wings a bit and incorporated something more, something else to our kind of portfolio, and then it all started from there. So yeah, from the very beginning. I'd never been into prison before I started doing the project, and now it all seems very normal to me. But
Can you say what is it about you that makes you want to do that kind of work, that outreach type of work? Because you mentioned doing that before you got into international rowing. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I've thought about this quite a lot recently, actually. I think it's always been a sort of drive for me to want to be kind of almost not subservient, but of service to someone else. Like even when I'm the youngest of 4, and I would always be like a sort of a bit of a game of, oh, Imogen, how quickly can you go and get my glasses because I've forgotten them, kind of thing. And I was really keen to do something that would help somebody. Not to say I'm like any kind of saint or anything like that, but I kind of quite liked. I think enjoying helping people is a big thing, and frustration at what I feel is unjust and unfair in the world. That some people can be born into a situation where they're given lots of opportunities, like I was, or born into a situation where their options are so severely limited. And I just find that I can't get past that. I think it's so unfair that because of your sort of surroundings, your future could be impacted so heavily as to end up in prison, and then once you end up in prison, really getting caught in that cycle. So I think it's, I don't know, a frustration with the way the world is set up, and wanting to try and do something to change it, even though it's only a very little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot more than most people, I think. Certainly a lot more than I mean, I would share your views, but you're actually doing stuff, and I'm probably not doing anything like as much as that. What is it about Fulham Reach Boat Club that was so special or striking in all this?
I guess I think because they totally embody the ethos of participation in sport, participation in rowing is something that can bring people together and can help people realize their own potential and realize their capabilities. That it just fits their whole drive fits perfectly with the Boats Not Bars prison program. It's about using a sport which may seem quite or has been quite elitist and exclusive to try and really break down those kind of self-perceptions and show people that you can take part and you can do things that you may not otherwise have thought that you could do. And I guess that was something that slightly resonated with me because I didn't grow up being sporty at all. I mean, I would have probably been one of the last people on my kind of school yearbook that people would have thought would have gone on to compete professionally, as it were. So I think realizing that you're capable of things that you didn't previously think you could, doing that through the medium of sport is. Sorry, that's my smart speaker thinking I'm talking to it. I think it could then transfer to other parts of your life. Like through the medium of sport, you push your boundaries, and then all of a sudden you think it subconsciously starts to build confidence in other areas of your life and ways of dealing with and coping with obstacles as and when they come up. I think I've gone off tangent there, but
no, I was really struck by that, and the thought that was going through my head was, given that you were not sporty, I mean, because I wasn't sporty at school, and I had my dad as a very sporty person. He was the PE teacher at the school I went to. But how did you get into sport, bearing in mind you weren't sporty?
So I think I had coxed when I was really young in Inverness. Didn't really like it. And then when I went to university, I mean, I did do sports, I guess, when I was at school, but it was entirely because they were going on a trip to Holland or something. Oh, I'll do that then. Yeah. And then I went to university, and I don't know if it's still the case, but I mean, I went to Glasgow University, and they were desperate for coxes, and I'd gone around the freshers' fair and signed up to literally everything. And then they roped me into cox, and I thought, yeah, I'll do that, but I'm not going to do anything anymore because you get up really early. But it was the social aspects of it that drew me in. I mean, I would imagine all sports clubs at uni have it, but I know Glasgow Uni Boat Club, I mean, they were really good at the social side. Maybe not quite so good at the rowing side, but yeah, it was that community that really got me into it and helped me do things that I didn't think I could do before. So, and that's what I want to kind of replicate with the Boats Not Bars program, and what Fulham Reach does is show that there's a community there that's so strong and supportive. And then for me, going from university to another local club once I graduated, again, it was the people, it was the community and it didn't matter whether you were tall, short, complete beginner, or you'd rowed internationally from being a junior. You were all respected. You were all in it together. So I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for that group of people around me, kind of nudging me along and just supporting me along the way. And fundamentally, I love being outside and being active. So it all kind of fell into line at the right time, right place.
Yeah, I guess that sort of idea of a supportive community is part of what you're bringing into prisons with the Boats Not Bars initiative.
100%, yeah. So I mean, part of it is just the fundamental get up and do some exercise every day, because that's really good for your mental health and your physical health. And often when you start with one piece of healthy behavior, you then start to add on other bits even subconsciously. Like, I know myself, if I've exercised, I probably eat better that day, and a lot of other people kind of say that to me as well. And so there's the kind of direct impact of doing some exercise every day. That's great. But then the other side of it is, like you say, it's building up a rapport and a relationship with people in prison, so that they, first of all, know when they're in prison that there's somebody out there actually rooting for them. And it's so tragic how many people don't think they have that, maybe don't have that. And I think, and then because we built that relationship, in prison, when they're released from prison, they can carry on that relationship through the club or through other clubs that they may interest them more. But they've started to learn that they could be part of a community, which a lot of them think. I see that they write testimonials and things at the end of the course and saying, "Oh, it was great to feel like a normal person." And you think you're not normal, and no wonder then you think when you come out of prison, well, I'm not going to engage with that because I'm different. Trying to show them that actually we're all part of the one community.
Yeah.
I think people go into prison it's about taking away somebody's liberties and freedoms, but we shouldn't be taking away their kind of hopes and optimism. And I think all too often in prison that we do take that away, which means that people come out with the assumption that there is going to be no community, no jobs, nothing really worthwhile that makes it, they may as well go and commit another crime. There's no other options for them. So trying to keep people hoping and believing in themselves during the period which they are serving time, quite rightly, for something that they've done wrong.
Can you remember what it was like the first time you went into prison to help with a rowing program?
Yeah, so it was Feltham Young Offenders, the first one I went into. And I think, and this is what happens when I take other people in, is that they're just amazed by how, like, oh yeah, they're just normal people. And like, yeah, really friendly. I mean, some of the staff at Feltham are amazing.
Really?
They really fill you with kind of like, oh, there are people who are really rooting for the offenders. And yeah, just the sort of normality of it. It's like going and coaching anywhere, although often actually easier in prison than it is in some other places I've coached. I won't name where, but yeah, I'm often asked, isn't it scary? And I have never ever once felt intimidated. I now go into adult male, adult female, and youth male prisons, and I never feel worried. And I know that the people that I work with have committed all sorts of crimes, but people can change and people do things wrong. And I think people often do things because they're a product of their environment and they're in a situation which they believe doesn't leave them much option.
Yeah. So typically, if you go into a prison, how long is there a defined length of a program which you're working with the residents?
Yeah, so it slightly varies on prison to prison, depending on what their needs and setup logistics are. So, for instance, at Feltham Young Offenders, it's an 8-week program, which I do in partnership with the NHS psychology team. So we use the sessions to engage with residents who are seeking mental health care. It probably won't surprise you that mental health is very, very poor in prison. And we're trying to create a positive link between activity and mental health, but also use the sessions as a forum to have discussions about things like teamwork or communication or anxiety, and saying, what does anxiety mean to you? And trying to put some kind of emotional literacy to it. So by understanding your own emotions, you can then work your way out of them in a more healthy manner than, I feel stressed, I want to hit someone or something, going, I feel anxious. Or actually, maybe this is like a positive anxiety. Like, you perform really well when you're nervous. I never performed well when I was rowing if I wasn't nervous. So I kind of learned to embrace that feeling of like, oh my God, I want to throw up, but this is a really good thing. And trying to kind of use emotions better and work with other people better, understand how your actions impact someone else. So that's the way it works at Feltham. In other places, it may be a 6-week program, on to the end of which we deliver a qualification, which will help hopefully with employment on release, whether it's directly as a rowing coach or it's doing a qualification which participants may never have thought they could do, and then knowing, okay, well, it's a stepping stone. I've done that. Maybe now actually what I really want to do is become a joiner. Now I can maybe look at doing that because I've succeeded in this thing, and now I'm going to move to this thing. The gym is where everybody wants to be in a prison. It's where people are most sort of settled. So kind of engage people in a place where they're comfortable, and then sort of take them through on a journey to somewhere where they wouldn't formerly have been comfortable, like a classroom. But I think
no, sorry, I cut across you. I didn't mean to.
No. Don't worry. I was just going to say the literacy rates are incredibly poor. I think it's something like half of prisoners have the literacy age of a 12-year-old. So suggesting to them, hey, let's go sit in a classroom and do some qualifications. They're like, no, definitely not. Say, come to the gym. We're going to do a course. There's a thing on the end of it if you want to. And they go, okay. And then at first they're a bit hesitant towards it, but then warm to the idea, and then end up doing something that they previously thought that they wouldn't do.
So did I understand that right, that actually some of the residents get a qualification in coaching or towards coaching on the rowing machine, or is it they get a qualification that they've done a rowing machine course?
So they all get a certificate from Fulham Reach to say you've done the course, which even in itself is it's heartbreaking. Sometimes you hand this over the certificate that I've printed out on my printer, and they look at you and say, "Oh, it's the first time I've ever had a certificate." And this might be a guy in their sort of late 20s, and you think, no one's ever said well done to you for something. So they all get that. But then what we're about to start doing is the British Rowing Indoor Coaching Qualification. So yeah, that's what's about to begin. So British Rowing have been great at working with us to put it in a way that I can deliver it all inside the prison with all the materials. And then in time, hopefully coming up, we've got a level 1 first for sport qualification. That's not quite ready yet, but the indoor rowing Go Row indoor workshop is ready to deliver. So that's going to be the first people are going to be doing that in a couple of weeks' time.
Oh, wow. That sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
The other thing that was occurring to me was clearly you're working with the residents in more ways than just coaching them rowing. You're talking about, how it is dealing with anxiety and pressure and mental health. Is that skills that you've kind of learnt or just developed during your own time in rowing, or have you had to do special courses or?
So I don't actually deliver that side of it. That's the psychologists that come and do that. But it's a side that really, really fascinates me. I think, like you say, because of rowing, and like I mentioned, sort of understanding how anxiety and nerves are actually really good. I mean, I remember I used to be terrified. Like, why am I nervous? I shouldn't be nervous. Turning that around to be great. I'm nervous. This means I'm ready. I think psychology is, if I did my degree in philosophy and politics, if I could go and do a degree again, psychology really interests me. I love that. Well, the way people think really fascinates me. And in the degree that I did do, that was kind of the aspect of it that interested me. Like, why do people act the way they do? What is genetic and what's environmental, and what can we, if it's environmental, that's kind of great because we can change that for the better. So I learned so much from the psychologists. When I sit in with those parts of the session, and I try and put that into the sessions that I deliver elsewhere where I don't have psychology sort of backup. But no, I'm not qualified in that area. One day, maybe.
Yeah. So I guess with the guys on the machine, there's kind of all sorts. I mean, do people like going for scores, and do you do little tests on it and things like that?
Yeah, so we do at the beginning and end. We do a couple of basic tests just to show improvement, just to demonstrate that, look, if you stick to something week on week and you have the commitment and discipline to do it, you're probably going to improve. But you get all sorts of people doing the course. You get obviously some kind of gym monkeys who just love doing everything in the gym, and but then you get other people who are really unfit, never really normally come to the gym, and I think that's brilliant. I want that kind of spectrum of people, because in some ways getting the kind of real gym goers, that's great, but they're probably going to go to the gym anyway. Although they're often the ones that are looking for a career in in the sports industry, in the fitness industry. So they're really keen on getting the qualification. But then reaching out to the people who don't really normally go to the gym, or who are struggling with their mental health and are really using it as almost like a kind of self-medicating process. Like, I mean, that's hugely valuable to really get those people into positive behaviors and habits. So yeah, a really broad spectrum of participants.
And I guess it must be particularly satisfying when you see people that you've worked with come into the rowing community outside of prison.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it's not a lot because I don't work with that huge numbers of people, and we've had a 2-year break. But I can think of maybe sort of 5 or 6 people that have come through the program and then contacted us, and it is. It makes me very emotional whenever when somebody contacts us and says, right, I'm out, can I come and row? And you think, fantastic. So we've had some people come and have kind of come transition through the club and are now working, and they don't really row with us anymore, but they used us as kind of support from release back into the kind of community. People who have come to row at the club, who then worked at the club and now at university. It's seeing that transition is what makes it all kind of worthwhile. And I think although the absolute numbers of people are low, when you look at the cost of putting somebody in prison, it only takes 1 or 2 to make it financially viable. I think there's 2 ways to look at the merit of it. And one is the cost of human potential, which I think is reason enough, but the other is the sheer cost and economics. It costs about £18.1 billion per year, just the cost of reoffending, not the cost of people going to prison, just the cost of people going back to prison and all the associated costs. That's £18.1 billion of taxpayers' money that could be, if we spent half of that on stopping reoffending, that would be worth it.
Yeah.
The cost of putting somebody in prison for a year, a young offender, the previous cost I had was £75,000. I read something the other day that said it was actually £101,000.
Wow.
With a young offender in a young offenders institute for a year. I mean, it's just colossal sums of money, and I think about half the people go back to prison once they've been in prison.
Yeah.
So even if it's just a couple of people that don't go back to prison, then financially that's a win.
I'm just intrigued as to do the prisons have the rowing machines actually there in the gym, or do you bring them in especially for the courses?
No, they have machines. Some of them have more than others, and I'm always looking for more machines. So if anybody out there has a spare machine that's gathering dust, I would love to hear from them, because I don't do it with any more people than I have machines for. The sessions don't really work if you've got people getting on and off.
Yeah.
One person per machine. So yeah, the clubs, the prisons have their own machines which stay there, and sometimes they're able to buy some extra. They often have maybe 3, and they could be very, very old, but they often have a few. Ideally, I would do it with 8 people at a time. So if they can buy more, then they do. Or on the hunt for any they're going begging.
How could people? I mean, that was obviously one way in which people might support the program. If someone was interested in terms of supporting the program, how would that work?
I think at the moment the main thing that we need, and it's is money. It's just to keep the show on the road. I guess there's 2. One is money, and one is just sort of supporting it, advocating for it. If your club has a prison nearby, or if I ever come and ask you, can we bring some people down to your club, then get behind it. I think a lot of the problem with our prison system is that the public don't know enough about it. I didn't know about it until I sat on a walk bike next to John McAvoy hour after hour back in 2012. So I don't know if you know John McAvoy. He was I'm sure a lot of the people listening would also know, but former armed robber turned professional athlete. He was released and joined London Rowing Club in 2012. And speaking to him and understanding what the situation was, I mean, I didn't really think about the prison system before that. And that was when you asked earlier about what made me want to do it. It was through conversations with John that I guess what I wanted to do, the kind of helping people find their potential, was directed towards people in prison finding their potential. So trying to kind of talk about what it is that we need to do in our prison system, and it's not about punishment as such. It's about, yes, take people's freedoms away, but then try and help them rebuild so that when they're released, they're in a better frame of mind to be our neighbour than they were when they went in. But yeah, money is the other thing.
Yeah. You mentioned John McAvoy. I've not actually met John, though. I've heard him talk on podcasts and things loads. And he's obviously iconic. I mean, maybe just describe a little bit about what he's like, because he's had so much reach in terms of his story, and how that relates to people in prison now.
Yeah. So John, if anyone's watched BBC series that was on recently called The Gold, he came from the McAvoy, is part of the McAvoy family. Mickey McAvoy, who was in that drama about the Brink's-Match robbery. So he left school at 14 and joined the family business, as it were, which was armed robbery. And he was part of that world, and he saw himself as, well, this is my life, and hated the police and any kind of institution, like government. Anyway, he eventually got caught and was sentenced. I think it was 3 life sentences. Served time in Belmarsh High Security Prison. And whilst he was there, started rowing. Broke a number of world records whilst inside, and then was released. And then you get released, and then you serve. You can serve the rest of your time on license. So there'll be maybe certain areas, geographic areas, you're not allowed to go into, and people that you're not allowed to meet, and so on. So he was he was on license when he joined London Rowing Club and started rowing. Didn't tell anyone where he was from initially, and then after, I can't remember, maybe a year or two, did tell people. And I think he was worried that people would shun him because of his past, and I think it was actually quite the opposite. People sort of respected him even more. Like, wow, you know, people respected the journey that he'd been on. So now he's a huge advocate for not letting people's environment dictate their future. So he does a huge amount of sort of engagement work with schools and all sorts of forums to try and help people find the best of themselves through the medium of sport. So he's got now a running project on the go at the moment, but he's an ambassador of Fulham Reach Boat Club. He's support Gloves Not Guns, which is a boxing charity. It's all with the focus of getting people involved in a positive activity and making the best of themselves, which they might not think that there is a better version of themselves, but trying to show them that there is. He's just incredibly charismatic and passionate about the cause. If you ever get the chance to go and see him speak, it's well worth it.
And I just wondered, does John's story have an impact that you can see on the residents that you work with?
Yeah. So at the start of each course, I show a little video I've got of him, and it definitely makes people go, oh, so he was just like us, and now he's doing that. Because it's all very well me walking in and saying, oh, you know, you don't need a life of crime. You can do X, Y, and Z, and they're like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, you sort of middle class white girl, like, I went to a state school. I'm not a million miles from, but it's still, I'm obviously not. I wasn't from John's background, so seeing what journey John has gone on is really powerful. And then I think the only kind of point at which people will slightly go, oh, well, maybe that's not me. I mean, John is a phenomenal athlete. He now does all sorts of things. So, and I'm not trying to get the participants, to become professional athletes. And I try and make that clear that although if they want to, that's great, and we will support them all the way. Really just saying, look, here's somebody who completely shunned other people's expectations of him, everyone thought that, right, you're just a bad lad, you're always going to end up in prison. And he said, no, that's not me. I'm doing something else. And his commitment and self-belief is hugely inspirational. And showing the video, showing the film to participants, I think does kind of light this little, flick the switch and go, oh, actually, yeah, maybe I could shake off my past. Maybe I could do something different in my future. I think it's a really powerful story.
I'm thinking of John as a role model, obviously for men and women. You mentioned you go and work in women's prisons. What, if any, are the differences working with female residents as opposed to male residents?
So it's the same. I found working in community clubs with men and women. Women want to ask a lot more questions, so I need to put quite a lot more time aside for a women's prison. They want to talk a bit more about it, understand a bit more. They often plan ahead a bit more. They want to know the training program for the next 6 weeks, whereas the men don't care. They'll just turn up and do what I tell them there and then. And I sometimes try and talk through, right, your next session is going to be this, and they kind of go, I don't care, I'll just do it, I'll read it when I get here. So there's quite a lot more discussion. I think men sometimes go at things a bit more gung-ho, like, well, I'm just going to pull really, really, really hard, whereas women are a bit more work on the technique. Often a bit more conservative, like don't quite believe in themselves as much. And I think the men, I guess they still don't necessarily believe in themselves much, but they will often, they're much more likely to blow up on a very so there are sort of some differences, but I think one of the things that I think men and women that both appreciate about rowing, and this was something that was a guy called Arshay Cooper who took part in a rowing project. Amazing, also brilliant speaker, amazing story. Grew up in, was it downtown Chicago? I've forgotten now. Chicago. Took part in rowing projects in the 80s, where he lived in an area where gun and gang crime was rife. He's written a book and it's now been turned into a film called The Most Beautiful Thing. And he said one of the things about rowing that was special and that was different to other sports is that you were in a team, like you're all really working together. As anyone who rows knows, there's probably more synchronicity in a rowing team than there is in any other sports team. But you've also got your own personal space. And if you've had a traumatic life and you've lived through trauma and you've been in violent situations, then a sport where you are, which is combative, even if it's football or anything like that, it can be quite triggering to those kind of fears. And something Arshay said was that rowing was great because I had my own space and it was calming and it was sort of therapeutic, whilst at the same time being a team sport. And I think that's something that participants also really enjoy. People in prison have often lived through quite traumatic episodes. And so having that kind of calmer environment, but still working in a team is something that rowing has as a real strength. And I think sometimes the women's groups feel that more so than the men's groups. But I'm not quite sure if it's more or less, but
I get the sense you have in this role quite a demanding schedule. That might be wrong, but I mean, you mentioned what you're doing today, and I thought, oh wow, that's a lot. I mean, how much commitment does it involve from you?
Yeah, so it's it's a full-time job. I'm now in 7 prisons, and I go into each prison once a week. And then the prison staff deliver a second session, and then there's a third session which participants do on their own. So there's an element of being coached and supported, and then with the prison staff being supported, less so coached, and then one where they take responsibility for doing it. But in terms of my schedule, it means I'm kind of batting around all over the place, going into prison and out again, and then doing all the other kind of running it alongside.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of traveling.
Yeah. So it's a doable job. Is there something, because I kind of want to turn to your rowing career and look a bit at that. I'm just wondering if there's something that we haven't touched on with Boats Not Bars that I ought to have asked you, or we
Oh, I don't know. I could talk about it for hours. I guess people often just want to know. I think it can sound far-fetched, like why are we doing it? Well, there's a reoffending problem. There's a bunch of research showing that participation in sport is connected to reduced likelihood of reoffending. There's some Ministry of Justice research and a few other studies done which showed that. And then so sport helps. How does it help? And one is, we mentioned, like the community, the sort of building of self-belief and positive self-identity, then building like soft skills, the communication, the teamwork, time management, time discipline, and then qualifications, and then last of all, getting people involved in the club, either on day release, if the prison can facilitate that. So we take people out of prison for a day, go rowing, or once they are released, joining the club for free, giving them that support network, which fundamentally was why I got involved in rowing in the very beginning.
Yeah. So let's go back. You talked about your involvement at rowing, coxing initially, then at university, and then joining in terms of community rowing club. How and when did you decide that you could be good at rowing to the level of, international?
Not sure I ever did. I was always not. I'm quite small for a lightweight rower. Lightweight rowers are small.
What did you weigh in at?
Racing, I would often be, I think at my very lowest, I was down around 53. I'd often, even when I raced my single, I think I was like 55, 56.
Whoa. Because it should be, just for people watching, 57 is the sort of average weight. And you can be 59 in the women's lightweight single, can't you?
Yeah. So I'm quite small. So when did I decide? So at university, I didn't hit all the big numbers on the erg. So I guess I was always kind of second boat kind of criteria, kind of standing. And then when I left university, I joined Clyde ARC and started sculling, because there was only a handful of us and we were all in singles. And at that point, when you're on your own in a boat, suddenly you can see what you're capable of. And I started winning things like Scottish championships. So even as a lightweight, be winning the open single sculls event for a couple of years in a row and going, well, I might be weak, but I seem to be moving a boat okay. Even then, I never ever thought I was going to go and row internationally. And then there's a guy in Glasgow who really sadly died not so long ago called George Warnock. And he's a bit of an institution in Scottish rowing. And he said to me, you want to get yourself to trials. And at that point, I was maybe 25. And I, honestly, if he hadn't said that day, I don't know if I ever would have. And that's kind of one of the things that I mean about just having somebody just giving a suggestion. If he hadn't have said that, I don't know whether I would have. Anyway, at that point, I think I still didn't have the erg score. I think the following year, maybe then, I finally scraped the erg score for the first time, 728. I got 728.0. And then went to trials February of 2010. Yeah, 2010 it was.
Yeah.
Thinking, really, this was just an opportunity to race people that were the best in the country, which I just loved racing. Like I had no real kind of, I'm going to end up doing this for 5 years. It's just I wanted to go and race. Went to the trials. That was when they were at Dorney, and I was on my way back up the M6 to Glasgow with the boat on the roof, and Paul Thompson phoned me and said, I'm not going to do an Australian accent. Do you want to come and train with us for a few days? And I thought, I'm meant to be at work tomorrow. Anyway, I phoned my boss on a Sunday afternoon and said, can I take a couple of days annual leave? Turned around, drove back, trained at Caversham for a couple of days, completely green. I'd never done a proper training program. I'd never been, I was so new to it all. Anyway, it kind of just sort of snowballed. So within a few months, I quit my job and moved to London, kind of hoping that I would make it into the team, which I did, thankfully, that year. So 2011 was my first international season. So I kind of went from complete, rowing was my hobby, to all of a sudden it being my career and going to World Championships 2011, which was my first international race, and we won in the quad. And I thought, well, this is great.
On Lake Bled too.
Yeah, what an amazing place. It was just beautiful. And then I thought, well, I'll stay for another year, and then another year, and then so on.
Yeah. So 2012 was the Olympic year. I know you were in a second women's lightweight double with Ruth Walchek.
So it was Andrea Dennis.
Andrea Dennis.
And then she was having issues with her back. So I was with Andrea for the World Cup in 2012. We went to Munich and Belgrade, and then Andrea stopped, and then I went to Europeans with Ruth.
So talk to me about, wanting to make the Olympics and that kind of.
Yeah, it was a funny kind of process. I still at that point had no kind of real, no desire to go to the Olympics, but it was so far off. Like, that's ludicrous. That's for kind of other people. I don't do stuff like that. I'm just a non-sporty kid from Inverness kind of thing. So I had no kind of real. 2012, I wasn't trying to get into the Olympic boat. I was totally new to it. I was like, this is fine. They do that. I do this. That's fine. I think slowly that idea starts to kind of like, well, actually, this is a possibility. Maybe I could do that. But at the same time, always having this narrative in my head, but you're too small and you're too weak. And this constant kind of like conversation going on in my head of, oh, no, you're not, you can't do that. And like, oh, but maybe if I could. So 2013, Kat was taking time out. Sophie had retired. So I kind of had moved up the ranks, I guess, quite quickly, really, from kind of join to suddenly being in the double, which for anyone listening, there's only, for lightweight women, the only Olympic category is the double. So there's only the 2 seats. So it's a fairly competitive boat class to be in. So then I was in the double for a couple of years. And I think it was really, the level of self-doubt I had was really damaging. Like, I think initially it was quite good because it really pushed me to do more. The problem is that can boil over, and it became quite self-destructive. And added to, so being small and underweight, I was given sort of extra weights program to do, which on one hand makes sense, build me up and make me stronger and bigger because I have the weight capacity to do it. Although by that stage, my erg score was actually pretty reasonable.
What did you get it down to?
707.
Wow.
So it's not sub 7. That's what I think the girls are now. But I mean, I was 55 kilos when I did 707, so it was kind of not bad for the weight I was on. And then adding on the extra training program and absolutely killing myself, almost literally. I then got ill, and then I was taken out of training in October 2014. October 2014, with Red S.
You had Red S.
Yeah, so
because I know Zoe. I've talked to Zoe McBride, who you raced, I think.
Yes, So that summer actually, 2015. And I was completely depleted. My body had just given up entirely. I wasn't. It's strange to look back on it now, and I mean, I was just. You tell yourself you're just being a bit feeble, and of course you're tired because you're training hard. But I mean, all the sorts of things that were glaring signs that something was wrong were just were ignored. And then I was pulled out, and actually a study was done on my condition, whatever you call it. And lots of the biomarkers were just, way off what you should be for a healthy person, let alone an athlete. So I was out of training for a number of months, kind of told not to do anything.
Really?
So I wasn't able to move, wasn't sort of told not to walk too much, that kind of thing, which...
How did you cope with that experience?
Not very well. I think I'd built up, and this is kind of also what I think informs what I do now with sport. I had built up rowing to be sort of the metrics were my self-worth, and I'd lost touch of what it was that got me into it in the first place, which was I did it because it made me feel good, and I did it because it was a good friend, the social circle, and all the things that I originally got out of it, I'd lost sight of, and it was now a case of hitting numbers, and it was just a very unhealthy kind of relationship I had with exercise and hitting speeds and
Yeah.
I don't know, all sorts of metrics to hit. So yeah, it was a kind of quite a unpleasant, I say quite unpleasant, very unpleasant time. Also knowing that coming into 2015 is the Olympic qualification year. I've just been taken out of my seat in the double because I had to recover.
Yeah.
And kind of knowing that it was very unlikely that I was going to get back in. I mean, when I was taken out, we weren't sure whether I would make it back for anything that season. I sort of unbelievably did. I managed to come back and won trials in my single, which was a complete shock to everyone. But wasn't back in the double. I went to Worlds in my single, which is when I raced Zoe. She won. I came second in my single, and it was so bittersweet because 6 months previously, I didn't think I was going to be in a boat at all.
Yeah.
Now I was there winning silver in my single, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But the double also won silver, and that was going to make it highly unlikely that unit of Kat and Charlotte would be broken up. I mean, rightly so. They were doing really well. So kind of seeing, well, I'm getting better. This is brilliant, but my Olympic dreams are now pretty much wiped out.
So you beat Kat Copeland and Charlotte Taylor in singles trials.
Yeah. But it's not the single that goes to the Olympics, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They love you.
So, I want to come back to talk about just that competition, for 2016. But I kind of wanted to ask you something that I was looking at, your races, and I tried to understand in that double in 2014 that you were with Kat Copeland.
Oh, yeah.
And you won a couple of World Cups. You won in Lucerne and you won in Aiguebelette. And then I remember that particular semi-final of yours because you came fourth in semi-final, so you didn't make the A final. What was going on there?
So we'd had this brilliant World Cup season. I think I'm right in saying it was the first time Britain had won lightweight double at Lucerne. I know they have done again since with Imogen and Emily, but everything seems to be just going brilliantly. And we went to Worlds. I think things had started to slightly unravel. We'd been on training camp and it had been horrific weather, and the water had been awful. And I don't think we weren't rowing as well as we had been. And then we got into that semi-final, and the Boatswain is I think it does have quite tricky conditions. It's kind of known to be slightly swirly. I think it doesn't matter what conditions. I think we should have still been able to come out in the top three. I don't really know. I don't know why it happened, but we ended up coming fourth, having gone into that event being kind of the front runners, really.
Yeah.
Or one of the front runners, and it was just pit of your stomach, knowing that, well, this is, everything is just sort of, even mid-race, and just trying to keep your head in the game, going, no, we can bring this back. But, the closer you get to the finish line, the less chance you have to fix the problem. We went into the B final. We actually still came up for a very brief period, held the world's best time.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which was,
was that galling or good or?
So I think for Kat it was made it worse. I think for me it made it slightly I thought it's like, for me, it kind of felt like, well, we are still quite good. We just really messed up one race. Like, there was no question of that. Yeah, it slightly made it. I mean, on one hand, we also, to be able to look at David Tanner in the face again, we needed to win that B final, which is a fairly horrible position to, like, yeah, to be in. I mean, you want to win any race, but yeah, I think knowing that, well, we can still do something was for me positive, but didn't change the fact that the situation we were now in was that we were going to be heavily scrutinized, and yeah, it threw up a lot of questions about what the following year was going to be like.
And did that sort of sense that surrounded you, those emotions, did that contribute to you with the Red S syndrome?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we had 3 weeks break. I was so terrified that of what was going to happen. I didn't really take a rest. I kept training throughout the 3 weeks, which in hindsight was just ludicrous. Like, more than ever, I think I needed a break, because that was mentally a really challenging thing to happen. But I didn't take a break, because I thought, oh, well, I'm going to hit the ground running when we get back after the break, after Worlds. And I sort of hit the ground crawling in reality. So I was already physically not probably in the best condition I could be. I think it was quite stressful because I started to build rowing results to be a proxy for my kind of standing, like self-worth, I guess. And knowing that it was all slightly unraveling. So I think, yeah, it meant that I did push myself harder physically than I think I would have done otherwise, rather than having a bit of composure and self-belief and being a bit more balanced about it. It was just, I will do any session as hard as I can, because that's what's going to make me fitter and stronger, and not actually acknowledging that my body needs recovery. And if I was really flagging, saying that, and saying, right, I need some time out. I can't. My body can only take so much. So yes, I think it contributed for sure.
So one thing that I find amazing, perhaps I shouldn't, is that with all the support that British Rowing had, medical support, that they weren't able to say, Imogen, you need to take it easy or something before you actually hit the buffers.
Yeah, and it's a big frustration that I have. I think there's more known about it now, and I think, sadly, I think things have been learnt, which I wish they'd been learnt earlier. But at least if things have moved on a bit, yeah, it's frustrating. I think there were clear markers, even just in terms of me. I would always try and do more. I remember at one point actually saying, I think I need to do less, but then not being allowed to do less. And that should have been a big, a big warning sign. And then some sort of biological markers like lactate testing and things being kind of like not correlating with the scores I'm producing.
Yeah.
And it not being kind of picked up on early enough, just sort of like, oh, well, just, keep it going. This is meant to be training. This is meant to be a hard training block. And you're kind of going, there's a hard training block, and there's somebody sort of spiraling down the plug hole. So yeah, maybe I think it could have been avoided, and that's the frustration. But
And then the next year, you became champion of the Thames in the Wingfield Skulls.
No, that was 2014. So that was, I think.
Oh, was it? It was a year before.
I think it was. So yeah, that's when things were going brilliantly, and I was sort of, I won Wingfields, and that was amazing. I think it was my favorite race ever.
Really?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It makes me kind of goosebumpy thinking about it.
Oh wow. Yeah, for people watching, could you just explain for people watching why that's such a big deal?
So the Wingfield Skulls is a kind of almost like an invitational race on the Thames on the boat race course. So from Putney up to Chiswick, and it's done in single sculls, side by side. There's no other race like it And that particular year, we actually had, I think it was the biggest entry. I think we had 7 scullers, which was quite unusual to have that many. And they were all really good scullers. There was like Vicky Thornley, Beth Rodford, Fran Houghton, Vicky Mayer-Laker.
You beat all those.
So yeah, so I was lining up with all these proper heavyweight scullers, going, oh, and it's all, and there's no lanes or anything. You line up, and then it's just a battle and the flag drops, and you all just have to jostle for position. And there's a lot of, it's the most combative rowing race, other than one that I've done a couple of times over in Italy, which is you have about 200 scullers setting off at the same time, but that's different. But yeah, it's just push after push after push. So you're racing for 6 kilometers, but the first 2 kilometers is like a constant sprint where you're just trying to find a little bit of ground, find some water to get your blade in, where you're not going to smack it through somebody's hull, and fight your way through. It's the most exhausting race, but I think I like it because it's quite kind of tactical, and you're rowing in dirty water all the time, and you just have to make the most of it and push on through. And yeah, it's brilliant.
Wow. So I just wanted to get a sense of, how close you were or not to Olympic selection for Rio.
So 2014, that was that winter. 14-15 was when I was out, and then I was brought back into training, and come April trials, I was still way off fitness. I mean, my erg score had gone from 707 to like 720 something. But I think I was rowing a lot better because I'd had to do a lot of training at like rate 14 because I wasn't allowed to get my heart rate up. But it just meant I really nailed some technical things. Still not perfect, but it was a lot better. So then we did trials, and I won that, and that was an absolute shocker, in a good way. So then we went into seat racing, and unfortunately, I think fitness comes into play a lot in seat racing because you're going out racing, turn around, go out again, race again, and I think at that point my physiology hadn't improved enough to cope with that kind of turnaround. So we seat raced, and I think Kat was definitely in the boat anyway, and then I was seat raced against Charlotte, and Charlotte beat me in the seat racing. So I was beaten, and Charlotte had the seat, so they went ahead in the double to 2015. I went in the single in 2015, and then the other girls in the quad in 15. And we all, and like I say, they came, the double got silver, I got silver. It was kind of like, well, something's got to happen to the double getting worse for somebody else to get a look in. So by 2016, they were still going well at the point where selections were made. I went back into the quad for 2016, and actually it was a really, really positive way to finish, to round things off, because it reminded me again of what it was that way back when got me through to it, that it was that being in a crew, and doing it for and with other people, and those girls that I was in the quad with are now like still super, super close friends, and I'm so glad that I ended up finished my rowing career in the quad, so same way as I started, because it gave me a lot back in remembering what it was really all about. And the medals are lovely, and the speeds and the numbers are great, but actually it's kind of the people that you do it with. That's why I do it.
Was Emily Craig in that boat?
Yeah. So Brianna Stubbs, Ellie Piggott, Emily Craig, and myself.
Yeah. So you were world champion in 2016. Did it mean anything? Because I don't know what happened to the lightweight double in the Olympics, but they kind of blew out a bit by the looks of things.
Yeah, I think we all found that really difficult to watch. I mean, I hugely felt for them, having gone through the 2014 experience of going in as high hopes and then it all falling apart. And it just makes you feel sick to your stomach. It was also frustrating, though, knowing that we felt that we could have any of them, any of us in the quad. No, we could have done that better, but it still could have hey on the right day. I don't know what happened with those guys, and it didn't make any of us happy to see it happen. It kind of just made us feel a bit numb. Like, that's a shame. We've all 6 of us worked really hard, and I think those that make the top boat are helped by being pushed on by the people kind of beneath them, and so it kind of felt like almost like all 6 of us have moved this project on. What a shame that we can, those guys didn't get the medals that we thought they deserved, but it's one of those things. And then we raced the quad and won it, and I kind of realized that I was really unexcited about it in a sense. Like, I loved being part of the crew, but actually winning the medal, it was one of the things that made me think I need to take a break or change or retire. I in 2011 I was over the moon. In 2016 I just felt like, it was a relief rather than a celebration. I don't want to be doing this with that kind of emotion. Like, it's got to be exciting.
And how afterwards did you get into that Maldives thing?
So coming around that summer of 2016, I'd been speaking to Mel Chowns, who kind of helps people transition into sport, through sport, out of sport, and I'd been talking about what I was trying to do. And anyway, I kind of it was offered to me this job of coaching rowing in the Maldives, which I thought quite a nice place to go and think about what I want to do next. So I took this job. The idea was to build a rowing program in the Maldives. And so I left sort of a couple of weeks after Worlds finished, flew out there for 7 months, lived in the town in the very south, one of the very most southerly islands of the Maldives, and worked on that. And it was amazing. I'm glad I went, but I was also, I think, glad by the time it was time for me to come home, because I was really just kicking the can down the road in terms of figuring out what I needed to do next. Like, I thought there'd be like this sort of epiphany moment, and there wasn't. It was also in some ways quite frustrating because of some of the attitudes towards rowing, and it was quite difficult to kind of try and build in a kind of habit of sport, which I think it's moved on a lot now since I was there. But I think they were trying to aim too much at building a performance program, when actually what they need to start off with first was grassroots. Get lots of people rowing, and then from that you'll build the kind of performance end of things. Anyway, that was it's still ongoing, which is fantastic.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so. Last time I checked, yeah. So
and then how was it when you came back? Did you know what you would go into, or were you a bit lost? Or I got back in April 2017 and still really didn't know what to do. And rowing coaching was something that was sort of easy for me to pick up on a kind of temporary, short-term, non-committal basis. It was something I had done a bit. I used to coach at Barn Elms. I had a coaching qualification, and so I could pick up work fairly easily. But I kind of realized that it wasn't actually the rowing coaching itself that gave me a buzz. It wasn't helping somebody to go faster in a boat. It was great, but it was when somebody would do something and they would come away buzzing and full of confidence. That was the side of it that really intrigued me and interested me. And kind of going back to the conversations I'd had with John back in 2012 about, well, maybe sport could be a medium for kind of personal development that's nothing to do with podiums and winning medals. It's just through the medium of sport you can learn things that are really useful in life. And then so it took until 2017 to 2019, those 2 years, to kind of bumble around coaching at all sorts of different places, thinking, oh, maybe I want to do high performance, and maybe I want to do community, and then kind of finding that actually what I want to do was not really rowing coaching at all. It's almost like counselling through the medium of rowing coaching. So it sounds like your future is pretty set for the sort of medium term.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, if we can keep keep funding enough to run the project, then yeah, I am so passionate about what I'm doing. I think it's also it's kind of my baby because I started it, but even if I was joining somebody else's project, I meet so many people every day who have so much potential and skill and talent, and I just find it such I mean, for want of a better word, it's so criminal that society kind of doesn't help them put that into something more positive. So if I can get to a few hundred people a year, and help them achieve something that means that they don't go back to prison, and it's not just that individual that benefits. The ripple effect of helping that one individual is huge, like their family and friends in the community, and also the people who they may impact if they were to commit a crime again. It's not just one person, it's a whole host of people that are that benefit from it. So yeah, hopefully I will be doing this for a good while longer.
And how much do you still keep in contact with, the rowing scene or the international rowing scene?
Loosely. I mean, I do look at results. I feel so old now. I know so few of the team nowadays, but I do keep an eye on, I guess, the people that I know, and especially obviously the double, lightweight double. I guess I sort of in touch with the rowing world by virtue of my job.
Yeah.
I'm still a member of I live in Henley, so Upper Thames Rowing Club. Although I haven't actually been rowing in quite a long time because I injured myself quite badly. I can't start rowing again now. So loosely speaking, but I don't. Yeah, I guess running is kind of the sport that I do more now. But I mean, I can't watch a rowing race and not deeply miss it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't miss it. I love training. I don't miss the faff of rowing training.
Yeah.
But watching people race, yeah, I still makes my stomach all jangly, and I wish I was out there.
Wow. Well, Imogen Walsh, we've been talking for an hour and well over an hour, and it's kind of amazing to listen to you, actually.
Thank you. I feel like I've been rambling.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's been absolutely fascinating and humbling as well, really.
Thank you.
So have a look at Boats Not Bars on the internet. There is a website there, I think.
There's not a huge amount of information. There's a Fulham Reach website, but there's not much about Boats Not Bars. But our social media feeds are probably the best place to keep an eye on it. And hopefully we'll have a new website soon, which will give some more information. But if anyone wants to contact me individually as well, please do, and I will tell you more about it.
Brilliant. So we'll end the live part of this interview now. Imogen Walsh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.